Hi, I'm Katy Bray, and I wanted to spend just a few minutes talking about the chakra system. And at first, what I'm going to do is talk about how they're known in more mainstream understanding, and then I want to talk a little bit about how I see the chakra system and how I work with them. Some of you are going to be familiar with the chakras in varying degrees. For some, maybe you aren't familiar with them at all and you've never heard of them. For others, I think a very common place that we hear about the chakras and start to learn about them is in a yoga practice. If you're someone who takes yoga, you've most likely heard about the chakras. And so really, the chakra is a Sanskrit term that means wheel. And these wheels actually look more like almost like little tornadoes or vortices, if you will, with the larger part, what we would call the wheel, is facing forward, and it's sort of a cone shape that gets a little bit smaller in the back. So there are 7 major chakras. We have tons more chakras than that, but there are 7 major chakras within the body. And so these are energy centers, energy wheels, and they are made up of subtle energies. There is science that has shown how they are actually connected to specific glands within the physical body. That's something that you can definitely search if you're interested in hearing more about that. But each one of these 7 major chakras represents a different frequency of energy, a different vibration. They all have a sound that is associated with them, and they also carry information. So the first chakra, what is also known as the root chakra, there are Sanskrit terms as well, which I'm not going to get into today. But the root chakra is at the base of the spine, and the color is known to be red. And it is the slowest moving energy center, energy wheel that we have. And it has the lowest sound, the lowest vibrational frequency. A few inches above that, just below the navel, is the second chakra, or the Sacral Chakra, and the color is orange. And it's just a little bit faster, just a little bit higher in its note and frequency than the root. So as we move up in ascending order, the vibrational frequency just goes up, the sound goes up, and the speed at which this wheel is spinning also increases. So the Sacral Chakra, the second chakra, is just below the navel point, and the color is orange. Then we move into the solar plexus, and that is the third chakra, known as the solar plexus chakra. The color is yellow. And then we go into the center of the chest to your heart, which is, the color is like an emerald green. And again, ascending order, as ascending vibrational frequencies and speed, we're moving up. The throat chakra is the next one. And this one is the color of really the sky. It's like a sky blue color. Then we have our 6th chakra that is typically seen as indigo, and it's also known as the third eye. It's right here. And the crown is right up here, literally the crown of the head. The color is violet. Now, each one of these energy centers, or wheels, if you will, that carry these subtle frequencies represent different sort of characteristics or different qualities. So the root chakra, for example, many people understand that to hold a lot of our survival and our basic survival, our basic needs, our trust. You can even think of the hierarchy of needs. It's very similar to that, actually, in many ways. So at the root, at the base of our spine, that is where, our sense of safety and being safe in the world comes in. The second chakra is often known to be about creativity and sexuality. The third chakra is what we often consider to be wisdom, or our place of power. And in our heart, it is just like it sounds. It's really the place of love, of gratitude, of connection. Our throat is our place of communication or expression. And the sixth chakra holds the energy of insight, intuition, and the ability to sort of see things clearly or not. It's where our perception is. The seventh chakra or the Crown Chakra is really where we are connected to the divine. And honestly, we're connected to the divine everywhere. We are the divine. So, in our human terms, we often say that it's really through the seventh chakra that we feel most connected to our divinity. And I think that is true for a lot of us. So that's a very, very, very basic interpretation of what the chakras are. They're these subtle energy systems within our body, our subtle body, and again, related to our physical body, that hold different vibrations or frequencies, and they have the qualities that I've just listed off. Now, when it comes to my work, which I call energy architecture, what I started to explore many years ago was not just, that the root chakra is about survival or basic trust. When I was working with people, I started to see that there was so much more behind that. And so it got me questioning, well, okay, so we can say that the root chakra is about survival or about trust and having our basic needs met, for example, but why is that? I'm not someone who will just take everything at face value or just take what I hear. And so I started to really explore why these things are said to be true. And as aligned as I am with the way mainstream or even a yoga class puts out what the chakras are about, I've come to understand that there is this whole world behind why they are those things. And so when it comes to my body of work, for example, and I will go up and I will share, sort of what I see behind each one of the chakras, is in the root chakra, for example. Yes, it is about survival and basic needs and feeling safe in the world. But what's behind it is it's where we really have our connection to our family of origin, for example. We have a deep connection to our ancestors, to our lineage. In fact, if you do any work or ancestral clearing or healing, or you're interested in that, what I've seen over the years is it's within the root chakra that's where that energy begins within our system. That's where there's a potent amount of that lineage or ancestral energy that we have to work with. A lot of people might call it epigenetics. Now that's a very common term, where I see the most potent amount of that energy is within the root chakra. So it's the root chakra is not just about, gosh, am I going to have enough money for this or that? And can I feed myself? It's, when I'm born, in the stages of development of the chakras, the root chakra starts to develop the minute that we're born, and it doesn't reach, let's say, maturity until about the ages of 3 to 5. And so, all of those energies are really set in place within the ages of birth to around 3 to 5. Because we're talking about energy, there's really no hard lines or hard rules. I'm just giving you the information that I've seen over the years as being average. So let's say you're born into a situation where, let's say your parents are really stressed out, or it's a very stressful situation. Or perhaps it's a single parent situation. There's a lot of different ways that we are born into lives that are less than ideal, let's say. And those imprints are within the root chakra. So beyond looking at money matters, which is also very, very important, of course, if you're having issues with feeling like you belong anywhere, feeling like, maybe you were the black sheep of the family. Maybe you fear really being in relationship or really connecting to people. A lot of people will think that's a heart chakra issue, but often, 99% of the time, that's not where the issue originated, let's say. It can result in heart chakra issues, but the original bit of information that created this challenge of connection is almost always in the root chakra, because it comes down to that sense of being safe or not safe, which is almost always connected to our family of origin or something within our lineage. Now, with the second chakra, yes, creativity and sexuality, so important. I mean, I think those are two of the most critical energies that we can have here in these physical experiences, because it is through creativity and sexuality that everything is born, right? I mean, everything comes from that. But as we back things up, once again, what I have seen over time, sometimes the ways that we are creative, for example, is we start to become manipulative within our relationships because we don't know how to have our needs met. So let me just say, let me back up a little bit and say a little bit more about the second chakra, and then I'm going to dive into that piece a little bit more. Within the second chakra, the development stage for the second chakra will start around 3 to 5 years. Again, it really sort of depends on where the root chakra development left off. And it will go until about 5 years of age. And in that time and in that stage of development, what we are starting to learn about are the relationships within our family, how we relate within our family system, how we relate within the larger community that we are a part of. If, for example, if your family has different associations to, a church or an organization or whatever it is, that's all very root chakra stuff. But the way that we relate to those communities and who we learn that we are allowed to be or who we are not allowed to be, that's all absorbed in the energy of the second chakra when the second chakra is being developed. And so when I say that creativity can become manipulation, which is definitely a form of creativity, the manipulation can often be, who am I sort of making myself be that I am not? Or how am I holding back who I am within my personal relationships because I've learned that somehow there's something unacceptable about them, or even if it's threatening to someone else, or who I am makes other people close to me feel really uncomfortable. So I'm going to start to withhold who I am. So that's just one example. This body of work is quite deep, but I'm just wanting to give you a little bit more to work with. So let's move into the third chakra now. And the stages of development with the third chakra are beginning around 7, sometimes 8. So let's say 7 or 8. And it will go until about the ages of 9, 10. It's a little bit of a shorter time period. But within this third chakra, again, it's yellow, it's in the solar plexus. This is where we start to understand who we are in the greater sense of the world. So yes, the energy here is about our sense of personal power. There's no question. It's also the place that we will often hand over our power. And instead of being in our power, depending on how we were trained within our first 2 chakras, we could find ourselves going to college and getting married and having 2.5 children and, getting a 9-to-5 job. I know these are sort of maybe outdated examples, but there's a lot of us that still see that that's what we're told that we're supposed to do, that's where the security is. That's root chakra conversation right there. So what we start to do in our third chakra energy is we start to sort of sell out in the greater part of our lives, and we start to structure our lives based off of the shoulds, all the things that we think we are supposed to do, because somehow that's what we're told to do. That's going to lead to fulfillment. If you do X, Y, and Z, you will therefore be happy and you will fit into society. You will be a beautiful part of the matrix where you are doing exactly what you are supposed to do. And what we start to find is when we do these things that we think we're supposed to do and they stop working for us, that's when we start to hit walls with an identity crisis. That's when we start to go, oh my God, I've done all these things and I'm not fulfilled. This is where we really start to question almost these in an existential way, what am I really doing here? What is the meaning of life? Who am I really? These are all very much questions that come up when we are starting to re-examine our third chakra and the way that we were sort of put on autopilot. So asking some of those questions is a really great way to disrupt some of the patterns that were created when the third chakra was being formed. Now, the fourth chakra, we start to get into a different energy. It starts to get even more subtle, even though we're talking about these subtle parts of ourselves. We are much less connected to the lower, denser, earthly frequencies when we move into the fourth chakra. The third, second, and first are very much connected to the earth and our experience here. When it comes to our fourth chakra, we start to get more invested in our own internal experiences, because that's really about our heart and where our heart is, and really getting a sense of our essence. Now, the development stage of our heart is around, we'll just say around 9 years old until about 13 years old. Again, there's no hard and fast rules. It's general, but it's pretty average. And within our fourth chakra is where we do start to, this is the time, if you look at that time frame, even developmentally for most people, that's often when those first real crushes, or even some of those first boyfriend, girlfriend, or whatever your preference is, those first sort of romantic stirrings happen. And that's when we start to learn about love. That's where we start to put these other parts of ourselves from chakras 3, 2, and 1 to the test. And oftentimes, unfortunately, at this age, I say unfortunately, but I think it really is part of the human experience, we're often testing out the things that we were told we were supposed to be, and then we're learning how to take those things into relationship with us. And so that's not the easiest road. I think we can all relate to that at some point in our lives. And I think for some of us, it took longer to grow out of that than others, which is fine. Everyone's experience is their own for a reason. But as we start to work with this energy, and as we start to mature and evolve, we start to ask even more questions. And it usually comes off of the heels of something in our third chakra system going, gosh, this life I've created hasn't really worked out for me in the way that I wanted or the way that I feel fulfilled. And so it takes us into this fourth chakra conversation where we really start to have an inner reflection about, what do I want? What am I really here for? But in a deeper way. It's not so much about the personality asking the question so much as it is the soul of who we are saying, how do I want to be expressed here? That's very much alive in the fourth chakra. And so when we move up to the fifth chakra in our throat, as I said, it's commonly known as our chakra of expression or communication. And again, I'm very aligned with that. And yet, when we take the step back, what I've observed is this is actually, the fifth chakra is really an energy where it's about having a choice. It's really a place, we talk about free will a lot here. in these kinds of conversations, and I see that the fifth chakra is actually a big place where our free will takes place, and this place of choice, especially when we are consciously doing this work on our evolution and our expansion, which I'm guessing you're probably one of those people because you're watching this or you're at least curious about it. What the question becomes in the fifth chakra is, am I going to take action on, like, based on the information of my programming, or based on my essence, on who I feel like I'm expanding out to be, or who I'm really here to be? That is then when we learn how we are going to express ourselves and how we are going to communicate. And there can be different answers from different aspects of us all of the time. In fact, I think that that's more common than not, that some answers will come, or some expressions and behavior will come from this higher place, this higher knowing, or more authentically expressed self, and others will consistently come from autopilot or programming until we start to see that that isn't working for us anymore. And so this is a constant conversation that we are having with ourselves, and a constant energy that we are running as we are evolving and processing life as these spiritual beings. Oh, and I forgot to mention, I apologize, that when we get into the fifth chakra, the stages of development are from the time that, we're a teenager, around the time that the heart chakra stops the development. And it stops, the fifth chakra stops anywhere between 20, 22. There is definitely a range. And I want to say this quickly. When I talk about the development and the maturity being reached within these systems, it's very much like when we're born, we have a brain, and we have a full brain. And yet it's through different periods of our lives that our brains will develop, where one aspect of our brain is working a lot harder, and it's building all of these synapses and all of this information. And the other aspects of our brain are not doing quite that amount of work. Well, and to a point, sometimes that part of the brain isn't really fully online yet. It's just not developed. It's the same thing with the chakra system. So I don't want there to be any confusion around that. When we're born, we have a full chakra system. It's just that it's always collecting and storing data and creating these patterns that then give feedback into our life. And so when we look at things like the law of attraction and co-creation, it is these subtle energies that are coming from us that we are creating with, okay? It's not just a matter of mind and willpower. Oftentimes we find that doesn't work, and that's because there's this whole other conversation going on within our subtle body through the chakra system. The sixth chakra is, and the seventh, I call those our etheric chakras. They don't really have stages of development the way that the other chakras do. They are naturally a lot lighter, faster, and much more developed and in place when we get here in these physical incarnations. So the sixth chakra, as many people see, is the place of wisdom and insight. And I agree with that. But what I also see with the sixth chakra is it is the place of our perceptions, and where our work is often is that we have to pay attention to the perceptions that come from our programming, the things that we learned about the world and about ourselves back when we were developing our first and second chakras. The energy moves up and actually becomes our perception of the world. And so when we are looking at a shift in perception or a shift in perspective, when we are doing our work, our evolutionary work, the things that we really want to question, the reason why we go into our beliefs is because it is the energy that was solidified within our first chakra and our second and our third, things in the earlier stages of our development. So this is how that works from an energetic perspective. And once we start to engage in that conversation and know ourselves in these capacities, what we start to find is our intuition, which is very prevalent within the sixth chakra, our intuition opens up that much more. That our ability to see and perceive without projecting our own interpretation into what we are seeing becomes a lot clearer. And that is what clear intuition or clear insight is. I know a lot of people who are very intuitive. I think we're all intuitive, by the way. I know people who are very intuitive, and yet what I have noticed is sometimes their projections of their own perceptions get filtered in when they are supporting someone else. Whether it's a friend or a client, it doesn't matter. And so some of the very important work that we can do, especially if we are supporting others in any capacity by use of our intuition, is to make sure that we are not projecting our own perceptions from our own worldview and experiences onto other people. And what I'm sharing with you today is a really great way to start working through that so that you can be a very clean, clear channel of information and insight for yourself and other people, that it works for ourselves as well. That's a whole other video. I'm trying to keep this brief, and believe it or not, this is. And so when we move into the seventh chakra, the space where we are really dialed in, and where our connection to source energy can just flow through us so easily. This is really our connection to oneness. So that's what I like to explore in the seventh chakra. Is not only is it about spirituality and enlightenment and all of these beautiful things, it really is, the seventh chakra really is the field of oneness. So in the first chakra, oneness isn't there. We find oneness through community, through family of origin, through the earth plane. That is where we seek connection, oneness, okay? But oneness in terms of us all being a piece of the same divinity is not the same reality in the root chakra as it is in the seventh chakra. So what that looks like in effect when you're working with the seventh chakra is you can notice you might be someone who has a lot of incredible dreams, or very prophetic dreams, or very symbolic dreams. I know a lot of people get incredible information through their dreams. I do sometimes. That's not one of the ways I get a lot of my information, but I know people that do, and I'm always wildly fascinated. But why that is true and why that's related to the seventh chakra is because the seventh chakra is always getting information. It's always open to the oneness. It's always open to this cosmic collective field where the energy and information is available to us at all times. And so when we sleep, when we're in the dream time and our egos are sort of literally taking a nap, that leaves us very much open to the collective field in that oneness where we can gather information. This is also where synchronicities will come through us and come manifest by way of our energy system. So synchronicity is another seventh chakra experience that we get to have here on the earth field, or on the earth plane. But it is another signal of our oneness, that everything is so divinely orchestrated that things will come together by way of synchronicity for us. And when we have a very active seventh chakra and the rest of our system is, as clear as we can have it. I mean, I think that's a consistent, let's consistently take care of ourselves kind of thing. The more we are going to experience synchronicities, the more we are going to experience this idea of oneness, which can also come in the form of prosperity and abundance, because in that conversation, we don't just know in our minds and because we're trying to convince ourselves. We know in the whole of our being that there is no lack, that we are in the field of oneness where everything in existence is already in existence and we have access to it. That's the principle of oneness. We have access to all there is. And so when I journey through the chakras, these are the ways that I like to process the information and support other people in processing the information. So if you're looking for any kind of call to action here, or any next steps here, what I would really encourage you to do is to start to look at the information in this video today, and maybe write some things out. Start to go chakra by chakra and look at how you relate to that and how you can see that showing up. And I promise you, it will start to move energy for you, and you will start to experience yourself and your world in very different ways. So, I hope you found this interesting. I know I do. I could talk about it all day long. But that's my basis for the chakras and the way that the chakras work. If you have any questions, please, feel free to leave a comment, or you can find me at livewiththelightson.com, and I'm happy to answer any questions that you have. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you liked it, make sure you subscribe. You can like it as well, and you can watch more of my videos right over here.